Lots of NHL news in the past week. Welcome in to the DNVR Avalanche podcast presented by Bet365. We got AJ, we got Big E, we got Rudo coming to you live on an Avalanche off day where we have a little bit of time to break down a number of different news items. For the Avs, the news of the day, Oliver Kylington officially activated off of injured reserve, so he is back. We'll see exactly how much he plays over these last 3 games before the break, but you would expect him to get into at least one, yeah?
He should play in all 3.
Okay. I'm open to whatever.
I agree with AJ. I think he's going to go in. Whoever spot he takes, he's going in, and then he has a good game. Great. Hey, awesome. Hey, see you next game. You know what I mean? He has a bad game. Well, he's just getting into his rhythm, right? Let's put him back in there. That's just my gut, unless what he's been dealing with, you know what I mean? I'm not too sure what it was, but, doesn't hold up, and which sure sounds like he's pretty healthy to go now. But, I do agree with AJ. I do believe he goes in, and unless it's really disastrous, you know what I mean? I think you see him in all 3, but who knows?
I mean, obviously,
even if it's really disastrous.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even if it is, man, Keaton Middleton, Sam Malinsky, Calvin DeHaan, they haven't given you a good couple of weeks. So, Josh Manson hasn't given you a good couple of weeks. So you're really searching for something there, and Kylington has, of those guys there, that has easily the highest upside. And you have decisions to make at the deadline. So, they only have, 5 or 6 games before the deadline when they get back from the break. So they need to get him into as much action as they can to see how they feel about him, because right now you could easily make the argument that they need 2 defenders. If Kylington is going to step his game up and actually be the guy that we thought he could be when he signed here over the summer, then you need 1 defender. And that changes all of the math at the deadline. So I just think that you need to maximize his runway. But the coaching staff's love of Keaton Middleton seems to know no bounds.
I agree with the long-term thinking there, but also, as we record this podcast, the Avs haven't given up a goal in 2 full games of hockey. Hard to get a coach to change a lineup when things like that are going on.
It's a fair enough point.
Hey, we're here to nitpick, man. That's what we do. We're here to nitpick.
It's my best skill, perhaps. Realistically, compared to the other news we're going to talk about today, certainly not that major of a piece when we're talking about the Avs maybe switching out a bottom pairing defenseman, as opposed to some of the moves that have gotten made around the league, which, to be fair, the Avs made one of those too. I guess that was more like 10 days ago than this week, but
old
close
news.
I know. Compared with what the NHL has done and the NBA losing its actual mind in the past 48 hours, that Mikko trade feels like it was a long time ago.
I don't know much about basketball, you know what I mean? But I mean, I saw it too, obviously. I mean, I don't live under a rock, but, wow. I mean, I guess it's a wow, right? I mean, but I wouldn't be able to analyze it or tell you, if those guys are good or bad. I have no idea. But I know one of them's a big name. I know that. Luka.
They're both pretty big names, but one of them's old and breaking down, and one of them's in his prime, and it's very, very good.
It's
Slovenia, like Anze Kopitar.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know that I've ever seen that many people call it the worst trade in history when it happened. So good luck with that, NBA.
The number of people refusing to believe it and being like, Shams' account was hacked. This isn't real.
You know it's bad.
That's funny.
I do want to get into some trades in the NHL, but first I did want to talk about, maybe not directly related to the Avs, but Central Division news with Ryan Hartman and his pending suspension here. I don't know if you guys have seen it. I assume you have. I've certainly watched the play against Stützle. It's pretty blatant to me, man. I don't see how you can't punish him heavily for that.
I don't know that we would be talking about a major suspension were it not for his history.
History, sure. Fair enough. But the history is lengthy, so.
Right. Yeah. The history being what it is suggests this is just who this guy is. He's not ever gonna curtail it. He's never learned to walk the line. You know, you got to give him 8 games or something crazy and just call it good.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's got that in-person hearing via Zoom. I hate that. They should try to change that word, right? In-person hearing. But, I had one of those back then, and I felt so bad. So, I mean, I'm not going to defend him. It is a bad play. History falls into it. And then, he plays hard. Like you said, he crosses the line at times. It looks like he crossed the line there, and probably going to end up paying, heavily for it.
Just to reiterate his history, he has 4, 5, 6, 7 fines since 2017 and 4 suspensions outside of those fines. So this will be his 5th on the list.
Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn.
Not a guy who has kept it clean, we'll put it that way.
But that's why right away they went in person here. You know what I mean? Like right away,
I mean, even without the history, I'm not saying he's going to get the book thrown at him if he was a cleaner player, but I watched that play back, and I know we have the advantage of replay and super slow-mo, but sure looks like he makes a conscious decision to drop on Stützle's head there. Like, it's a pretty tough look.
Yeah, it's kind of like Jamie Benn on Mark Stone in the postseason.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, I landed on him. Bro, you smoked that guy.
We all saw it.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know. There's better ways to do it. The Pietrangelo hit the other day. A much better way to infuse your team with that type of energy. Yeah, exactly. So
they won the game. There you go. That's what I mean. I know he ends up fighting. I'm not saying again. You're gonna engage physically. How do we say his name? Cooley, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he enjoyed. I mean, Pietrangelo. He's been around the league so long. I'm not sure why he doesn't know that he's going to get hit there, but he sure doesn't really realize that he's getting hit, and he has the puck, and he just gets. He's right there in the train tracks. Legal hit, awesome play. That's what I mean. Like, get involved. Get change the game around. The Rangers were a different team after that. Came back, won the game, right? I mean, yeah. Jonathan Quick, 400 victory. Yeah, so, again, when you watch too many games at the same time, they all blend in. But, it was awesome. That's what I mean by you got to change the momentum of a game. You got to go and do something. And that guy gets the assignment this year. I mean, I didn't know really who he was till, like, last year a little bit. This year, I'm like, I enjoy watching him. I do. I think he gets it, and he was rewarded with a nice contract. And awesome. All done legally, all done within the rules of the game and with some passion and some emotion. And you need that in a game. You need passion and emotion in a game to be victorious. You do. It's a passionate game.
We'll talk a little bit more about the Rangers in a bit, but I do want to stick a little bit with the Central Division here, starting with the Dallas Stars, a team that seemingly has unlimited health, finally gets a knock against them, losing Miro Heiskanen for a while. And their answer is to go out and make a trade for Mikael Granlund and Cody Ceci. Now, on the one hand, Mikael Granlund's having a great season. That's another offensive weapon that Dallas is adding to the stable. On the other hand, you take a look at a right side on their defense that includes Matt Dumba and Cody Ceci, and it's not the prettiest on Dallas's side on that front.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's wild to see Tyler Seguin and Miro Heiskanen both go down this year, right? And
Yeah.
like they have two real injury issues here. And so their response is to give up a first and a fourth for Mikhail Granlund and Cody Ceci. Cody Ceci now, the right side of your defense with no Miro Heiskanen, Ilya Lyubushkin, Matt Dumba, and Cody Ceci.
Yikes.
Are we for real with that? I
Apparently.
Okay. Great. Um, I'm not worried about that part of it. Dallas is not going to be able to do what it wants to do in the postseason if they don't improve that. It's just not. That's not good enough.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
and then Mikhail
Tanev
Granlund.
was a tough loss, right?
Yeah, yeah.
For sure.
Tanev was irreplaceable for them, clearly. But you add in Mikhail Granlund, and Granlund, for me, this is a lot of empty calories. Somebody has to score, even on bad teams. And it's not that he's not a good or decent player, but you're talking about a guy that if he's not going to play in Dallas's top six, he's not going to be part of, that the top of their lineup. I don't know that he's worth this price paid because he's been a deadline rental before and not been any good at it because he needs to slot into depth. And to me, this just looks like a team that bit on inflated numbers on a bad team. And I'm just, I wasn't interested when people suggested Granlund as a fit for Colorado. I wasn't interested. Now that he's in Dallas, I mean, I would much rather be Mikhail Granlund than Brock Nelson or Yanni Gord or any of the other guys that I'm like, oh god, this job just got a lot harder. With Granlund and when Cody Ceci, I don't feel like the job got harder. I'm comfortable.
No, just a good two-way player. Right? I really like the way he plays the two-way game. Always liked him. I told you guys that. I had a love affair with him back then. Love hate affair. You know what I mean? Like just then you're like, oh, then it comes down to pulling the trigger. You're like, is he a fit for us? I don't know. You know what I mean? So it's always been that way with him. I've always been a little gun shy. But this, he's a good player. Like he's, like I said, he's a smart player. He can play under special teams, and he's like a really poor man, Lucky in my book, like really, really poor man, Lucky. You know what I mean? Just a two-way player that can touch on your special teams and go from there. So.
The other thing I wanted to touch on here, and we don't have to get too in the weeds on standings or anything, but despite the Avs up and down last segment, it does feel like there's still hay to be made in the Central Division for them. Maybe that's more Minnesota than Dallas, if we're being honest. But let me just float the idea, and you don't have to take it seriously if you don't want to. Mm-hmm. Do the Avs want that 3 seed to play Dallas in round 1? Or are they trying to be a wild card again?
I mean, is it better off to get Edmonton or Dallas, Winnipeg, Vegas? Like, to me, just win as many games as you can because there's not a great option there, but I also don't think there's a matchup killer. And I'm just going to keep saying this about Dallas until they finally beat them in the postseason. I'll take my chances with the Stars. Like, I just will. And I'm also, I come from a gaming background. I want to beat my head against the rock till I break that damn thing. So, I'm not worried about any of that. If they could go on a god tier run and get Calgary in the first round, I would suggest doing that. But with that not on the table, I'm cozy. I don't really care.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I go play the games that are in front of me and then let the chips fall where they fall. I've always said that. You start trying to pick and choose, and I'm not saying that's what you were insinuating, but I'm just saying I think you just play the games and go where you're at, and then once you go there and you've left it all out on the line, you're on the wild card, or you're in first place, second place, third place. That's the seed you're in, and you get ready to to play in the postseason. In order to play in the postseason, you have to get to the postseason. You also have to play the right way, and you want to make sure you're hitting the postseason, playing the right way. And I think we're seeing some parts of it for the Avalanche right now that are working, some parts that are not working, and then we're seeing that when they put it all together, like a first period against St. Louis or whatever it is, then they're pretty unstoppable, pretty nice pretty fun to watch. So I think they're working on the consistency wherever it leads them. it leads them, and that's the seed you're in.
I'll take it however you can get it. I mean, of course, to do the thing, you got to win 4 rounds anyway, so it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. But
That's right.
if you can take an easier path, you'll take it, I guess. But good teams get the easier path because they're a higher seed usually. That's usually how things tend to work out. We are going to take our first break here as we are brought to you by the fantastic folks over at Mando. Some of these trades, the Luka trade, stinky, all right? That's where Mando comes in. That was a stinky grundle of a trade, and Mando makes sure you're smelling right and feeling right. Whether it's your grundles, whether it's your butt, your balls, your belly buttons, your armpits, you name it. Mando has you covered with tons of products to keep you clean and smelling right. They've got a bunch of different scents, whether you like bourbon leather, clother wood, Mount Fuji, or Pro Sport. They've got you covered with a ton of products. You can go get their starter pack today, and you can even get $5 off that starter pack when you use code DNVR at checkout at shopmando.com. That's shopmando.com with the DNVR code. $5 off is like 40% off your starter pack, and you'll get free shipping. The starter pack comes with cream tube deodorant, solid stick deodorant, and 2 products of your choice, like mini body wash and deodorant wipes. So whatever you need, Shop Mando has you covered. Please support our show and tell them we sent you over there. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando. And once you're smelling right and feeling good, make sure you're making your way down to your local Toyota dealerships to get yourself into the official vehicle of DNVR. Toyota has a vehicle for everyone. They've got trucks, they've got SUVs, they've got sedans, they've got it all. They've got 17 different all-wheel drive vehicles, which I don't. The snow's kind of melted here, but I don't know what it's like back east for you guys. And then they've got just a little bit. Yeah, well, you know what? Maybe the hybrid's the way to go, because 16 different hybrid vehicles for whatever commute, especially back east where it's just a bunch of cities connected together. So it'll help you out in that regard on the highways. Get with your local Front Range Toyota dealerships. They're the official vehicle of not just us here at DNVR, but the Colorado Avalanche as well. And you can find them here locally in Colorado with AutoNation Toyota, Arapahoe, and Centennial, Corwin Toyota in Boulder, Groove Toyota Littleton, Mountain States Toyota in Denver, Stevenson Toyota East in Aurora, and Toyota West in Lakewood. The official vehicle of the Colorado Avalanche. Second period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast. The other team, or maybe the team that is making the most moves, at least in the West, would be Vancouver. Now, the Miller deal was kind of a long time brewing here. I don't think anyone's surprised that it happened, but it also sounds like they might still be shopping Pettersson, or I guess I should specify EP, Elias Pettersson, because they have 3 Petterssons now.
They have 2 Elias Petterssons.
Yeah, I know.
They have a forward and a D. So it's EPF40, I think, is where we'll go.
God, we're getting desperate at trying to divide that up now. But
sounds
still
like we're
work
categorizing
to do.
tornadoes.
Still work to do for them. They're in a weird spot because they're currently the guys trying to chase down the wild card in the West, which is Avs in Calgary right now. Obviously, the Miller situation felt like it had to be done. They've been spiraling out a little bit, and it just, regardless of return, that happens. And then they go out and try and pick up some other pieces. I'm not really sure what to make of the Marcus Pettersson trade. I guess he's the biggest name in that, unless we're calling Danton Heinen the biggest name.
No.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'm just going to say, for a team chasing it down, they don't feel like this is all that impactful.
Yeah, the JT Miller deal, I think, is because they turned around and used that first-round pick and flipped it for Marcus Pettersson and Drew O'Connor.
Sure.
Like, given how they were with JT Miller, it's not hard to look at it and say, okay, just the harmony alone probably makes them better. Now,
Sure.
Philip Heedle's a good player. The concussion issues probably scared off a lot of teams, but a good player that could fit in nicely there. It'll largely come down to, does Elias Pettersson, the forward, like wake back up and go back to being a high-end player? Because if that does happen, then Vancouver's going to be a problem. Uh, Marcus Pettersson is good. He's a really good defenseman. He's rock solid. Drew O'Connor's a good depth player. I think the price was more than I was comfortable with. Even in getting both of them, had the Avs paid a first for that, I would not have loved it. And especially since Vancouver is doing all of this to what? Make the postseason? Do they think that they're going to track down any of the three teams ahead of them in the Pacific, so that their first round matchup is one of Edmonton, Vegas, or LA, and they get bopped, or they sneak in as a wild card and they get Winnipeg or Edmonton or Vegas and they get bopped? It just seems like a lot of work has gone into making sure that the mediocrity continues in Vancouver. And I respect that a GM says, hey, I want to go for it. Being in the postseason is better than not being in the postseason. But let's be honest about that team. It's just no great shakes. It was no great shakes last year either, when everybody that cares about analytics at all was saying, hey, this is going to come crashing back down to earth. It has.
Sure enough, yeah.
It has.
Let's not. Their position chasing down a wild card is honestly a little deceiving. They're the loser point kings in the West right now with 11 overtime losses this year. They've lost
23 wins.
Yeah, they've lost 5 more games than they've won this season. So it might be tricking themselves into trying to go for it a little bit here.
There are 7 teams out west you should take seriously.
I think that's fair.
That's fair. Yeah. I mean, they go back to Vancouver. I mean, all right, worst kept secret in hockey. We all know the feud between Pettersson and Miller. This is nothing new. You got Bruce Boudreau that was coaching there that talks about it on the radio. You got people that are saying this has been going on for years. But, last year you got Pettersson that extends, again, it's a boatload of money, right? But it does extend, then maybe the money makes you overlook, like, the situation, because obviously, clearly is a situation, because we wouldn't be talking about it right now. And then Miller, what is he, 5 more years or whatever it was. And, so you're like, kind of weird, because those are your top two guys up front, right? In a nutshell, those are your main guys. One is your skill guy. One's your emotional, like, whatever you want to call that, leader. You know what I mean? Like, kind of a warrior type deal. Then all of a sudden you leave your team no choice. I mean, right? I mean, you're talking about, like, people, you didn't get this, didn't get that. But at the end of the day, it's the worst kept secret in hockey. Everyone knows. It's not like that Luka Doncic, whatever, like that it's a bad trade. Like, no one knew he was going to get traded or whatever. Like, this is like, all right, there's an issue. Why would I give you the moon? You know what I mean? Like, there's an issue. But then, Rangers, obviously you're dealing with a partial no trade, correct? That's a little different. People are talking about, Mitch Marner. Mitch Marner has a complete no move clause, so totally different. Mikko Rantanen had a partial, right? Limited no trade, whatever you want to call that. You were able to move them. So every situation's different. This one I felt like it was tough for Jimmy and Patrick Alvin to go get a fair return. But where do they go? They go, I always tell you guys, where they feel comfortable, which is Pittsburgh, where they like this Marcus Pettersson. They're the ones that traded him from back then, from, I want to say, Anaheim, if I go back. O'Connor's a guy that was homegrown in Pittsburgh, I believe. So they're going with known commodities, guys that they know, guys that, Pettersson, you're going to see an extension here coming up for sure, because they know him and he's a good fit there. And then I think it was the Vinny Desharnais, right, that was not a good fit. And, kind of a lot of money for a guy you're scratching. And I think Vinny, great story last year, big contract, right? We talk about those contracts. You're a good fit somewhere. You go somewhere else, they expect you to be this guy that you're not. And I like the story of Vinny, and I don't know him. I'm just saying. And then now he gets caught up in there, and that's part of why the price was little high, right? Because they absorbed that contract, and I think it's part of the whole deal. Correct? It's so hard to follow right now
Yeah.
because there's so many trades happening, and then obviously this one they flipped him, to Pittsburgh, so he's not part of that. Vinny was not part of that going to the Rangers, correct? No, he went to the.
No.
That was the
He went to
Pedersen
Pittsburgh.
deal.
Yeah. I mean, it gets all like thrown upside down in there, but because they obviously those two deals, kind of like CMAC last year. Remember when he did the Bayern deal and then the Walker deal, and so they had those two deals cooking, obviously, simultaneously. Yeah, it is what it is, and I think the problem is with them. I mean, for me, I love talk, love footy, awesome people, and but I think it comes down to goaltending. I mean, I'm sorry, like Demko's been hurt. Demko hasn't been good when he's been back, and then obviously Lankinen brought them whatever he could, right? To what he is. He was supposed to be the third goalie, give and take. So it is what it is, and Vancouver is going to be fighting. And those markets, it's tough to say that you're rebuilding or whatever you want to call it. It's kind of like the Rangers too. Like they did the letter to the fans with Gordy there a few years back, and John Davidson, and then they were shown the door, and so if it's not working, it's hard to say, oh, we're pulling the plug on it. But you're right. It kind of leaves you in mediocrity all the time right there. You know what I mean? A little bit like Calgary. I'm not saying I didn't mind those moves, but, for what? Like, so you can have like, same thing, just a mid. You want to finish mid, I don't know. I'm just saying, I don't know.
Let me ask you guys this, because hindsight's 2020. It takes two to tango, whatever. Did Vancouver take too long to solve this Miller-Pedersen situation with a deal, or are they just not that good of a team? Because since mid-December, the team's season has essentially fallen apart.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to say. I just don't know what the goals were. Especially knowing that the Marcus Pedersen deal was, I mean, all intents and purposes, this is a three-way deal, right? So where were the Pettons in this part of it? Because the deal that they ended up doing with the Rangers was not all that different from the deal that was rumored to be on the table ahead of time a few weeks ago. So the Pens struggling and really kind of falling their own way out of playoff contention might have made it a little easier for the Canucks to say, okay, we'll take that deal. So knowing that they were doing big deals with a lot of moving parts with two teams, it's hard to get one team on board to make a deal like that. Trying to juggle all of that with two, I mean, that's tough stuff. So I'm not gonna. I would say the part of the process that was rough was Jim Rutherford coming out and just being like, "Hey,
it's a problem.
These guys kind of hate each other, and this could be a huge issue." Would be more of an issue for me than the length of time that it took.
Okay.
And again, we're not privy to all the conversations too. Like I always say, there's conversations that are not, part of it. Like AJ went to the movies that night, and then he's like, hey, this thing might got legs to go to Colorado. Who knows? Again, we're not putting words into C-Mac or Joe or whatever, you know what I mean? But maybe they were in on it. And teams, sometimes they slow things down, and then, they try to hold on, wait for me, and then the other team does. I mean, these things take time. They're just kind of annoying, and then for them though, I mean, I think people were just tired in Vancouver from coaches, like talk to, anybody talking about it, like, what I mean, because you're at, and I think if you saw JT Miller's last interview, I mean, the day before, it's like, he's like, I don't want to hear it, you know what I mean? Like, he goes, hey, what do you? He's like, no, I don't have an opinion. He's like, what do you think your GM just talked about? He goes, no. You know what I mean? Like, and again, I get it. You know what I mean? It gets to a point where when the GM says it's like a divorce and you can't fix the differences, you know what I mean? Then it's like, okay, this is a matter of time. But then after that, when you're in it, it's like, let's go. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Let's go. Let's make this happen.
So. AJ, I know you got to get out of here for the day. Thank you for hanging out. We are going to take our second break here while you get out of here. Of course, we are brought to you on this show by the fantastic folks over at Bet365. Go get with them. Use code DNVR365 when you sign up for a new account. You can get up to $150 in bonus bets when you bet $5 on anything, win or lose. So make sure you're getting in with Bet365 on that fantastic deal. You can bet on the Avs. You can bet against the Avs if that's your thing. I'm not going to argue with you either way. You do what you got to do on that front. But whatever you do, make sure you're having fun with it on Bet365. You can bet on the Nuggets. You can bet on the big football game. Go do it. Enjoy yourself. $150 in free bets is just fun money to play with. So do it with Bet365. And of course, when you do, you must be 21 or older, physically located in Colorado. And if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER today. And then once you've won some money with Bet365, make sure you're kicking back, relaxing, and enjoying an ice-cold Coors Light. Choose chill today with Coors Light. The mountains turn blue on the bottle or the can to let you know it's ice-cold and ready to drink. You'll see me drinking them on watch-alongs, or when we take over Ball Arena, I'll probably be having some. It's a fantastic beer for drinking during any sporting event, to be honest. I'll probably be having some during the Four Nations, too, which should be fun. Whatever it is, Coors Light is ready for the moment, and you can get it delivered right to your front door with CoorsLight.com/DNVR thanks to Instacart. So get it shipped over there if you don't want to get up off your couch, or of course, you can always find it at your local liquor store too. Again, Coors Light, one of the best beers out there, brewed right here in Colorado. So make sure you get with them. Make sure you're getting your Coors Lights, or if you like the banquet as well. I don't judge. Whatever Coors you want, go get it. And don't be like Eric. Make sure you know that the mountains turn blue. And that's not just a bit. They actually do turn blue when it gets cold on the bottle. He learned that when he was today years old. Yeah. Of course, Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. Please drink responsibly. Third period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast. We talked about Vancouver's side of it. I want to get into New York's side of some of these deals, and also the Flyers' side of some of these deals too. If you didn't watch pregame the other day, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to add one more thing for the Coors Light. Today's Bean Pot Monday. Don't kid yourself.
True.
If you've never been to the Bean Pot, one of the greatest college sporting events ever. It's awesome. First 2 Mondays in February. So friend of the show, Milan Hayduk, I'm going to bring him a Coors Light today. I'm going to bring him a Coors Light at the TD Garden because our boys are playing against one another. So I'm going to give him a Coors Light and wish him the best of luck, but make sure that Harvard doesn't win and the BU Terriers come out on top. So I'm going to do that for Coors Light right there.
Can you drink Coors Light out of the Bean Pot? Is that allowed?
Can you? Are you allowed
I don't know.
I mean, don't they sell it there, Coors Light? You know what? We're going to go find out.
There you go. There you go. I did
find
catch
one.
up.
I'm going to give one to Hedgie.
There you go. Now you're talking. I talked to Charlie O'Connor, one of the writers for our PHLY site, the other day for pregame. But we actually caught up a little bit more than that. We talked about the Philly trades that were made. We talked about the New York Rangers a little bit. So let's hear what Charlie had to say, and then we'll give you our thoughts about some of those moves out east.
I did want to continue this conversation with you, being from the East, seeing how wild it's been out there, especially lately. You have your Flyers trade, but just the other night, JT Miller goes to the New York Rangers. You guys essentially directly competing with them. What has the conversation been around New York this year with a team that has been so up and down and just, I don't know what to make of them. So maybe someone out East has a better idea than I do.
Well, I mean, the people I talk to that are around the team, that cover the team, have just said it's been a mess.
Yep.
And the vibes in that room, especially for the first, 2.5 months of the season, were, for lack of a better term, rancid. It was bad.
Sure.
And this all stems from things that happened in the offseason with, them trying to trade Jacob Trouba, them waiving to get around the no trade clause for Barclay Goodrow. Then you have Chris Drury make that ridiculous, open for business, Chris Kreider and Jacob Trouba are available, and then knowing that it's going to leak.
Yeah.
I've never quite seen, I've covered teams where the team revolts on the coach.
Sure.
I've seen that. It's normal for
on the
hockey.
GM.
I've never seen a team revolt on the GM, and that's why it was so weird. Because normally when the team revolts on the coach, the GM jettisons the coach to save himself. Well, the GM isn't going to jettison himself, so he then had to make moves. He makes the Trouba move. Obviously, they now bring JT Miller back, and Say what you will about JT Miller. And I don't know what happened in that Vancouver situation. It just seems like two guys who couldn't get along. But Miller does seem like a guy who sucks up a lot of energy in a room. Maybe that's what the Rangers need, is they just need someone who's going to change the vibes in one way or another. And
be a
JT Miller is a
distraction.
vibe
Yeah.
changer. Whatever you say about him, he's a vibe changer.
That's definitely true. You're talking about locker room vibes, things like that. We talked on the pregame show. At one point, your captain was getting scratched in Philly. The Avs have been without Landeskog as their captain on the ice for a couple of years now. We kind of have a debate going around the office here of how important the actual captain letter is for a hockey team. I'm curious where you stand on that. Opinion-wise, does that mean a lot? Is it a meaningful thing, or is it kind of just a letter on a guy in a room full of leaders?
I had a conversation a couple years ago with Kevin Hayes about this, because there was a year when the Flyers went without a captain.
Yeah.
It was the first year, well, actually the first year plus of John Tortorella's tenure, but that was the year Hayes was here. And I asked Hayes essentially, basically like, what is a captain worth? Does it really matter? And he was like, it's simultaneously really important and not that important. He said it's really important because it's such an honor. And every player wants to have the C. They dream about having the C. They want to be that important part, especially when you play for an organization with history, like the Philadelphia Flyers. It matters that you are the captain of the Philadelphia Flyers. It's a big deal. It's an honor. That said, and he put it this way, it's not like the captain in a good room is the only leader. You have so many other guys that chip in. But it's a big deal because of the mystique, because of the respect, because of the fact that it makes you higher profile. You saw it with Couturier last year.
Yeah.
If Couturier would have gotten scratched, not having the C, would it have been a big deal nationally? Yeah, I mean, people would have noticed. People would have been, oh, wow, Sean Couturier is not as good as he used to be. But it was the fact that he had the C is why TSN, why Sportsnet, why all the Canadian markets were picking up on it and running with it. It's because scratching a captain, it seems like it's a bigger deal than just scratching, the Flyers scratched Cam York earlier this year. Good player, talented young player, getting 20 minutes a night for the Flyers. That didn't really break through anywhere other than in Philadelphia. Scratch Sean Couturier because he's the captain. Suddenly everybody's talking about it. Jeff Marek, Elliot Friedman, everybody's going in on it. That's why the captaincy is important, because we make it important, I feel like.
So where do you stand on the debate of who you give the C to? Do you give the C to the best player on the team, or do you give it to a leader? And we've seen different examples of this across the league. Avs obviously have not given it to McKinnon or Makar. That's been Landeskog C. It's hard to argue with someone like McDavid, who it feels like is the best player and at least over the course of his career has grown into that C. But then you also have some elite level players that you feel like probably shouldn't be wearing a C.
I'm of the opinion that if I ran a team, I would give the C to not an elite player. A good player. I don't want to give it to somebody who's, getting 10 minutes a night or whatever. But I'm not giving it to an elite player. I'm giving it to more of a heart and soul leader type guy. And the reason why I say that is because I watched up close, covered it, the tenure of Claude Giroux as captain of Philadelphia. And I saw how much unfair grief he got from fans. He was the captain of a team that just wasn't that good. He was really good. A couple other guys, Jake Voracek, Wayne Simmons, they were really good. That team had no depth. It was not a good team. And what happened? Every time the team would lose in the first round or not make the playoffs, it was all Claude Giroux's fault, because the captain is supposed to magically make everybody else better. And to me, I just felt like that was totally unfair. If you give it to like one guy who I thought would have been a legitimate candidate to get it for the Flyers when they handed out the C last season, Scott Laughton. Scott Laughton's a good player. Every team in the league would like to have a Scott Laughton. He's a third liner, maybe a fourth liner on a true cup contender. He's a great guy. Everybody in the locker room loves him. He's a team leader. He's willing to step up and take criticism, take accountability. He's the kind of guy I would rather give the C to, because like no one is going to say, if the Flyers missed the playoffs and Scott Laughton is captain, that the reason why they missed the playoffs is Scott Laughton just didn't do enough. Like, everybody knows he's a 35-point guy. He's not going to be able to drag the Flyers to the playoffs. But if you give it to the best player and then they miss the playoffs, well, the best player could always have done more. If he scored 100 points, he could have scored 130. Look at what McDavid's doing. So to me, I would rather give it to a guy lower in the lineup to take some of the heat off my best player, because they get enough heat just by being the best player.
I think I agree with you, but I do think there is a balance to strike there. Of, as you said, when you put the C on someone, in some ways they become a face of your franchise, right?
Sure.
And nothing against Scott Lawton, he's not going to be in the first 15 names I think of when I'm thinking of Philadelphia Flyers. So I don't know how you balance that, and I'm glad it's not my job to figure it out. I'll just talk about it on a podcast instead, so it is fun. I'm good unless you have anything else you wanted to.
Well, I'm
touch
actually
on.
curious now that you bring it up about the captaincy question. So obviously the Landeskog situation is a weird one, but would you, in theory, give the captaincy to a McKinnon or a Makar?
It's Makar.
It's Makar?
Without a doubt, it is Cale Makar.
Okay.
McKinnon has never been that guy, and not that unbelievable player. He is part of the leadership group, but the Avs locker room, especially in this era, has always had a balance of you have a Nathan McKinnon who is unbelievably driven and focused, and especially before they won their first cup, he was a guy who was like, if you missed a pass by 6 inches, he's screaming at you in practice.
It sounds like Mishkov a little bit.
And look, you need some of that on your team, but that is not the guy you need to be captain. You need a guy a little bit more level-headed than Nathan McKinnon, a guy who will not complain to the refs every second of the day and can actually have a conversation with that guy. And it is very clearly Cale Makar on this hockey team as it is. Of course, we all want Gabe Landeskog to come back and be that guy, as much as some people seem to hate him out east, but we love him here. The reality is that rope is getting real short. If he can't come back these playoffs, if he can't give you a confident yes going into this offseason, the Avs pretty much have to operate as he's done. And that's when it becomes time to move that C to somebody else. So in my mind, no brain, it's Makar. I'm sure you could make a couple of arguments. If you're looking for a lot and type, Logan O'Connor would be that kind of guy in Colorado that you could throw the C on.
Always in favor of O'Connor's.
Yeah, I bet you are.
Getting some rewards. Not
you
gonna
can
lie.
have O'Connor. My first name's Nathan, so I'll take McKinnon in that trade. All right, we are going to wrap up here. I do appreciate you coming out here, coming on. Charlie, you can find him over at PHLY Flyers on all the socials. He's one of the best writers we have in the company, so go read his stuff on Philly sports. Go check out all that good stuff. We are going to take our quick commercial break, and we'll be back after this.
Just kidding. We already did our commercial breaks. Got you. I know we've had that conversation too about the captaincy, but it's going to be a thing that gets continued to be brought up about Colorado, especially given the situation they're in. Let me ask you this again. When is the right time to move the C if things don't work out for Landeskog?
Well, I mean, I think you're going to get a clearer picture, right? I think the picture's been murky. Whatever is that the word? Murky, like cloudy. The last couple of years with Gabe, you know what I mean? Because of the unknown of the injury, the unknown of the rehab process, and then obviously, there's no case to compare it to, And I think that now you are on a path where he's clearly getting better. When I say better, like when he puts on a pair of skates, he actually looks like a hockey player. Where, last year and the year before, people were like, oh my God, he's going to play in the playoffs. And you're like, no. Did you look at him? Like, he is not near ready to go play a game in the National Hockey League. And he wasn't. And I love Gabe. I am not bashing Gabe. Love him. One of my all-time favorites. So now with that said, now you can clearly see that he's progressing. He's progressing. Like, to what level? I don't know. You know what I mean? To the level that he can play great, and then at what level can you play? How can you affect the game in a good way? Obviously, not in a bad way. And are you okay? Are you comfortable? Is everybody comfortable with that? And then you'll know where this is going. You know what I mean? And then hopefully he keeps playing for years. You know what I mean? And then there's your answer. You don't need to do anything. Now, if it doesn't work, and then now you're in the summer, and it is what it is, and you might have to look at. Because it's been a few years, and what I mean, you might have to look at, okay, this is what we do. You smack it on Makar or whatever it is, right? And you know what I think of this? I think it's way overblown. I'm one of those guys, and I know I'm not the only guy that thinks that way. And some people are dead set on it. I still think you can be a little. You just used the word Logan O'Connor. I mean, he would be there a lot and whatever. You know what I mean? you can still be a leader whether you have a letter or not. And there's a leadership group. That's kind of how it works. Patty Watt didn't have a letter, didn't have anything, but was part of the leadership group, obviously with Joe and Peter, and I'm trying to remember who was there back then, like Sylvain Lefebvre, Curtis, whatever it was, Mike Keane, all the assistant captains. So and then you have Claude Lemieux in there and Mike Keane. So I do believe that at some point, you know what I mean, you kind of move on, so it's not a side issue anymore. You know what I mean? But I'm not worried about these guys. Again, now you lost Mikko last week, a guy that kind of kept things a little smooth, fun, so different than Mac, whereas uptight, like you said, and sometimes you counteract it with the Mikko. And I think what you're going to see now is, and again, like you saw on the road trip, you're probably going to see Gabe a lot more now, for many reasons. One of them being he's getting ready to get ready to obviously be cleared at some point, and then B, you want to offset that, that loss from Mikko, and then you want to make sure you're around, and he does make a difference. He does, and I think that's what you're going to see. But I mean, to answer your question, I think you wait and see still, to see what happens with his career, and then you go from there.
So, just to extrapolate on that a little bit, let's say worst case scenario, Gabe can't go. Do you give that C right away to Makar or whoever you want the C to go on, or do you think the Avs could run potentially without an actual captain for a little while?
Well, I mean, I think they've been running without one for a little bit. Obviously, Gabe been there, but not, physically all the time. I've been rehabbing, out of town, whatever. But I do believe that, the next year's, that's what I said. Like, I think, you cross your fingers, you hope that Gabe's there for the next 5 years. You know what I mean? And then,
of course, that's what you want.
Behind them. That's what I mean. But if not, then maybe you look at it by the summertime and before the start of the next season, and if you have a clearer picture on Gabe and where he's at, and that would be that. Again, that's a different story, but that would be a sad story because it didn't hold up, it didn't work. You know what I mean? So then you have to turn the page and move on. Hopefully it doesn't get to that.
Hopefully not. We're going to take a 1 second pause here. All right. I wanted to ask you, E. We've seen in the modern NHL, the last 3, 4, 5 years, teams have started doing their business a lot earlier in the season. The trade deadline has more become, I don't want to call it an afterthought. Big deals do get done at the deadline, but the deadline used to be this trade bonanza. And especially over the last few years, we've seen trades getting done in December, in January, in February, months before the deadline is actually there. Certainly compared to back in your day where it felt like everything was built up to the deadline and then it all happened all at once. Do you think this way is better? And I want to look at it more than one way. I know you're going to sit here and tell me, well, the players get more time with their new teams. Yeah, I get that. But from a viewership standpoint, too, is it not a little bit more fun to have a crazy trade deadline day?
I mean, I love it. I got to be honest with you. Like, I got traded on like 2 days before, but it's kind of nuts. And then one time I was getting traded and I physically saw my jersey. It's a long story, but getting swapping dressing rooms. You know what I mean? And then the trade got vetoed. That was my first or second year in LA. Anyway, it's kind of nuts. You know what I mean? And it's a whirlwind of emotions. But I think two parts to this why businesses is done a little bit earlier now. Obviously, with the salary cap being the last few years so tight and kind of plateaued a little bit. And my era was no salary cap. It was a little different. So you could actually, you had the internal cap, but you could do whatever you wanted, in a sense, within your own personal business. But I do believe that as a team, it's easy to play Monday morning quarterback and say, oh my God, they got Rudo, but they could have got Rudo and AJ. You know what I mean? Like coulda, woulda, shoulda. You know what I mean? And I think that that's never the reality. That's Xbox. Where you can make those trades. It's not how it works. There's a timing for it. It's crazy. Those guys don't sleep for weeks, and it's a crazy job. C-Mac, he's a hard worker. When you're in the middle of a trade like that, you don't sleep. There's anxiety. You're at the mercy of others too, at the mercy of your players. Make sure no one gets hurt. There's a lot that goes into it. And then I think that once you identify as a team and, as a staff, we're willing to get, X and Y. And once we get that, we're pulling the trigger. You know what I mean? And if it's a month before trade deadline, so be it. You know what I mean? Because we feel that this is what we're going to get, the most. And then, but a lot of times, like, you can say, oh, yeah, you could have got AJ and Rudo, right? I just alluded to that. Or you can say sometimes, like, man, the train drove by and it's over. You know what I mean? And they just went a different direction. And then you're left with nothing. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think teams, once they have that, they no look further than the Rantanen deal. Like, hey, if we're getting a Natchez or whatever like that, like, hold on a second. You know what I mean? Like, well, time out. If we're getting that as part of the package, we might have to pull the trigger now. You know what I mean? And we're not going to wait. I do believe that's better business than waiting and kind of hoping and crossing your fingers. Yeah, sure, it can work, but most often than none, it does bite you. So I do believe that's why you're seeing a little bit more right now of teams doing their business ahead of time, and because they've identified it, they addressed it, and then they're like, all right, if it gets to this, and it might not get to that because maybe, again, it takes two to tango. The other team likes the package of the different player better than our player. You know what I mean? And you cross your fingers and you hope that they're going to come to you. But then next thing you know, they go somewhere else. Then that's when you shift your gear into plan B, right? Because you always have a plan B and then a plan C and a plan D. And, and then it kind of shapes its way that way. And the more you wait, the more, first of all, the prices, or you make mistakes. You know what I mean? Like, Brian Burke's the best to say it. Like, he's like, you know what? The best mistakes are, the bigger mistakes are always made at the deadline or even on July 1st. You know what I mean? At free agency. And you just kind of get so excited, you know what I mean? Like, and then your roster looks good on the board and then you make mistakes. But I think if you've identified it, you mapped it out, you make it happen because you have to make it happen. It doesn't happen by itself. And I think you just follow the plan and stick to it and go from there.
Let me ask you this, then, for this trade deadline. Is it a little bit more unique because of what we've learned over the past week, where the NHL has come out and established what the salary cap is looking like, not just for next year, but for the next 3 years, really? They have a guideline so teams know exactly where their money is going to be at, especially compared to the last 3 or 4 years where it was a flat cap.
Yeah, again, a couple of the insiders came out 2 days ago. They were like, oh, they felt that, they wanted to, make it public at the Four Nations, but they didn't want, I mean, give me a break. You don't think the owners meet, and you don't think the owners are part of this, the partnership?
At least have an idea, yeah.
My Lord. Oh, the Avs got caught. You know what I mean? They had no idea that, 2 days later, oh my God, they could have fit Mikko in. That's not how it works. They know. They're well aware, and they're smart, savvy, some of the wealthiest and smartest businessmen in the United States. You're dealing with agents and, friend of the show, Alan or whatever, or anyone. Everyone is in on it to make sure they maximize the best opportunity for their, clients or the ownership for their pockets as well. It's a business. But to say that, all of a sudden they had no idea, only one side knew, but the other side didn't know, it's like, come on, that's not, oh man, it makes me laugh sometimes. But, at the end of the day, it's awesome. What you're going to see is a bigger number. It gives teams a little bit, because it's plateaued a little bit the last few years. We all know COVID and everything. It's, it's been tough. And then you see other sports, and I know Alan's one of the biggest guys that pushes that, when you compare it to different sports, and, where all of a sudden, the NHL has not really grown in salaries compared to those other leagues, for all the reasons, for whatever reason. I'm not saying Alan's right or wrong. I'm saying he brings a valid point. He does. But all of a sudden, what you're going to see maybe is, bigger escrow again, and then you're going to see the players complain and, all that kind of stuff. I mean, I get it. I think it's a number. It's a projection. I think that, they'll probably get to it. But then again, it invites more, like I said, escrow, where right now escrow has really gone the other way. You know what I mean? Where
they've eliminated it for the moment.
That's my point. It's gone the other way, where to zero. Now you're going to see it go back, So again, awesome. But I think it just gives you more flexibility. And I think it's time, and I'm biased. Obviously, I'm a hockey guy, and I want guys to make as much money as possible. And I'm biased. It's the best sport in the world. So you and I are biased.
There you go.
It's true.
Yeah, no doubt. Right. No doubt we're biased on that one. I do want to transition back to the Avs a little bit here. They have 3 games left before the big break. If obviously you break it down into this segment of 5, They've won their last 2, so they're off to a good start in this stretch. But these 3 are important. We talked a little bit about Vancouver the other day. That's realistically the one team still trying to chase Colorado down in a playoff spot. And Calgary's in there too, which guess what? That happens to be the team they play after Vancouver. So these are 2 big games where if the Avs can come out with 4 points out of 4 in these next 2, you're basically it would take something unbelievable for them to miss the playoffs at that point.
Yeah, and I think they're excited. I think it's like I don't know how to say it, but it's like there's only 3 games before you get a little bit of a break, and I think you've won the last 2, so you're actually feeling good about yourself, and then you're like, all right, let's make a little bit of a run. Then you go to Western Canada. We all know that, like whatever politically right now what's going on, then you're going to hear the boos of the anthem and all that kind of. It's going to make it for playoff hockey, weather, Canada, fun. You know what I mean? Like you're talking about, like you said, the first 2 teams, even Edmonton to a certain extent. Maybe you get 3 playoff games, right? And I'm excited for it. I know I am. And we'll get Kirky, legendary Kirk McLean tomorrow in the pregame. He just texted me, so he'll jump on with us a little bit. We'll find out a little bit what's going on with those Vancouver Canucks, and we'll probably get somebody from the Flames the game after, and then from Edmonton the game after. So it'd be nice. Join us for pregame. We'll try to get the perspective a little bit of some management or Kirk's head of the alumni on the other side, and obviously is on the Ring of Honor there in Vancouver, and former Avs goaltending coach too. So hey, always important. So we can talk a little bit with him. But I think I'm excited. I think the players are excited. And I think the guys that are going to the 4 nations are excited as well. In a sense that, okay, let's concentrate right now, and then we're going to live a different experience. So it's pretty cool. And I think that for coaches, I think they can't wait for this week to be over, because the break's been in the back of their minds. You know what I mean? Like for at least a month now, because you're looking at it. Where now it's like, all right, let's get those 3 games. And then after that, it's the stretch. And it's like, 5-6 games, like you said, before trade deadline. Then it's trade deadline. Then it's really the dance. You know what I mean? We're gearing up for the dance, and no more distraction of this 4 nations thing, and go from there. So I think players are looking forward to it. I think coaches are looking forward to it. And I think that it's going to make for a good week of hockey and a fun 3-4. But it's a tough one. It's a 3-4. And as you know, there's a Segababa in there with a tail end on the 3-4. That's a tough game there.
Well, that 3-4, at least if you're not one of the Avs top guys, you're not about to do a bunch of skating the week after. So
you're gonna go to Cabo, right in the sandbox.
Exactly. Got to earn Cabo on that 3rd game a little bit, but
for sure,
it'll be interesting. Avs, obviously they're no strangers to road trips or anything, but the Canadian trip always feels like a weird one for Colorado, where, they bounce across the western side of Canada. No Winnipeg this time, though, so who knows? Who knows how that changes things for them? We'll just have to wait and see how they play. Of course, make sure you tune in tomorrow for our pregame watch-along and postgame as usual, and make sure you're hitting up thednvr.com/events. Go get part of our takeover at the end of the month. After all the break and stuff, we are going to a suite in Ball Arena on February 28th against Minnesota. It's an awesome time. The suites are sick. If you've never been in one, you gotta come with us. You gotta have a great time. Super cool to watch a game in one. We're also gonna have some amazing guests in the suite, and you get free beers on the bus ride to and from the arena from the bar. So that alone is super cool. You can come hang out and have a great time with us. Please join us for that event. It's a good time. Highly, highly recommend. We're wrapping up today's show here. Any final thoughts on the NHL and this flurry of moves? Is this the fun stuff for especially a guy who's worked in management around the league?
I used to love it. Because, like I said, you map it out, and sometimes the clock is ticking because you're like, we're getting closer and closer and closer. Are we going to find that dance partner? Are they going to want to dance with us, or are they going to want to dance with Team X that you're fighting with for first place, second place, for a playoff spot? So it's kind of nerve-wracking. It's fun. But then you put your player hat on you know, on the flip side of things, sometimes it stinks because it's like, those are, you know, people's lives you're flipping upside down, you know what I mean, and their kids and their wife and, you know, all the above. And sometimes it's great because you do want to change and you want to trade, but a lot of times you don't expect it, and you're crossing your fingers, and every time you see the equipment guy or the, you know, coming in the locker room, you're always looking with this thing, you're looking down because you don't want him to make eye contact with you because, you know, a coach wants to see you. You're like, you got to be kidding me, you know what I mean? And it's always terrible. And some guys are awesome, like some equipment guys are awesome because they'll play with you, and you know, and then sometimes it's for real, and you're like, oh my Lord, I just got dealt. You know what I mean? You got to be kidding me. And it's just fun. It's not fun. It's the weird feeling. But on the management side of things, it's a different hat you got on. You're trying to maximize, you know, the best you can be for that team, and, you know, go from there. You know, and put the best product on the ice.
Look, they're the ones actually doing it, while the rest of us sit around and do it for pretend. So we'll see how it all shakes out for the Avs and otherwise, but we do have to wrap up today's show. So we appreciate all y'all hanging out with us for this one. Like I said, we'll be back tomorrow for a game day. Be sure to tune in here, or, you know, on TV or on the Spotify podcast, wherever you listen or watch us. We appreciate y'all, and we will see you on the next DNVR Avalanche podcast presented by Bet365.
We all silly like the mayor.